So today we are going to learn how to make a Figma component library using variables. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the Faithful Creative. Today we are going to learn how to make a Figma component library from start to finish. We're going to create a component library with its most basic components that will allow you to therefore go and expand on this system and create beautiful products, beautiful websites, beautiful apps, beautiful whatever you need. This is going to be a complete course. It's going to be a few videos, but I'm going to show you everything. We're going to set up typography. We're going to set up color. We're going to set up buttons. We're going to set up icons. We're going to set up text fields. And we're also going to set up navigation and footer bars. Very basics of what you need to at least create a website. And from there, you can expand it from there. So let's get stuck in. First thing is first. So one thing you need to know from an asset perspective, if you're already a seasoned designer, you probably already know this. If you're new to the game, I'm about to show you. So 9 times out of 10, when you're working side by side on a visual identity project for a brand, as the UI side of things, you are most likely not going to get all of the assets that you need to start off your component library. And that is fine, because what we need is the bare minimum. So in this case, what we have to work with is we have a logo. Great. That's all being crafted. Client is happy with that. Perfect. It looks really nice, I think. Then we have a color palette. Now, I know from discussions on the project that the color is not 100% secured. Well, it's not been 100% signed off yet. There's a few colors, and I think along as the project goes, we'll be chopping and changing the color. But that's just good because the component library that we're going to build with some variables would allow us to be able to be flexible to make the certain amends that we need to make and not break the design too much, if not at all. And then we are given some type treatment. So this is kind of like, the typography style that they're going with. So I'm assuming this is the primary font. This is the secondary font. Perfect. Cool. All good. Let's inspect what we have. So we've got a range of blues. And I'm assuming the hint here is that, well, we can use a light blue on top of a dark blue. We'll work it out. The good thing about UI design as well is that we have creative license to create how we use these assets on a digital platform, because obviously on the print sense of things, entirely different. So with type, we've got this primary font, I'm assuming, and it's called Regality. Great. We have the secondary font, which is Plastic Artisans, and I'm assuming this overline is also Plastic Artisans. Good, great stuff. Cool. So now we've got it all. Well, we don't have it all, but we have enough to work with. Now let's quickly hop into Figma. Now, when it comes to creating a component library, I personally like to generally start by creating a color scale. And in that color scale, we have the primary colors, we've got the secondary colors, we've got the semantic colors, and we have what I call functional colors, which will kind of be consistent of grays. Now, looking back at the color palette that we were given, we've actually been given some grays. So I'm thinking there'll be probably some grays be used in a print sense, but we clearly been given some guidance on how we can use these grays. Not a problem. Also, that white is looking a bit off-white to me, so I don't think it's only 100% white. Yep, definitely is literally like a 97% white. That's fine, because white sometimes, I'm sure from accessibility perspective, can be a little bit stark. But let's get back into Figma. So how I generally start to display my colors is, some people have different styles of doing it. Some people have color wheels, some people use circles, some people use shapes. I like to use what I call color cards. And I'll quickly explain it to you. So the whole idea of a color card is you're met with the color, and then you're met with the title of the color. Title of color. Yes, for my American peeps, I am British, so therefore I spell color with a U. And then I'll have that, that particular font size. And then underneath that, I'll have the hex code, if I can spell it. And then underneath that again, I'll have a little tiny description of how that color can be used. Now, just for, literal illustrative purposes, I'm going to get the AI really quickly to generate me something really quick. Give me a, it's all in caps, make sure you can read it. Give me a color description. Yeah, color description. No, give me color description. We're just going to plug something in. And you're going to see as we go through this that I'm not scared to use AI. A lot of designers are really touchy about AI, but it's not about what AI represents. It's about how it can make your life easier and how it can automate things. If I had, AI tools to help me generate, all of these things and, format it in the way I like, then everybody will be happy, right? Well, I will be happy. And if there are things like that, drop it in the comments. Let me know. So this is basically going to be the structure of my color card. And then generally as well, I tend to create this as a master component. So I often have a core components section. Maybe core is not even the right name. That might be a bit misleading. Let me call it page components. Yeah, page components. And in that, I tend to create the components that I'll use in the component library in general. But those do not get exported when you're using it in external files. So let me start by creating, well, first of all, I think first things first is I need to start to bring the colors in. Also, of course, we're going to be using variables because this is what this video is mainly about, how you can use variables to create a component library. And you're going to see the power of variables when it comes to tweaking those colors. Because remember, the client is not entirely 100% on the colors in particular. So our variables will allow us to tweak certain things and again, not break the design and keep things consistent. But before we get into setting, our variables up, so as the core of our design system, let me bring in the colors real quick. Yeah, give me a second. Sorry, what's that? So we got that kind of there. Get back into Illustrator. Get the bright color. It's a bit of a tedious task, but sometimes things are tedious for a short space of time until you get the rest of the work done. So I get that. This yellow. Oh. Then I'll get this brown. I think this, I don't know, this is more like a goldy brown, it's a really lovely brown. I saw this brown on a video on YouTube, on like an interior design video, and I really liked the brown, so I screenshotted it. And look, it's made it into the design. So sometimes inspiration can come from literally anywhere. Don't be afraid to take inspiration from anywhere. And these grays. Okay, so this black is actually not black. It's actually a very dark blue. When I'm setting colors, I take the main brown color, for example, this blue, and I knock it all the way back till it's almost black, but it's not entirely black. And therefore, this is how we get this, black. Well, the blue, black, black, blue. You know what it is. Then we get this gray. Nice. When I get this, I just noticed I don't have my keystrokes on. Let me quickly turn that on. Give me a sec. I'm going to turn it on. Let me drop this last color in. I'll drop my keystrokes in so you can at least see what functions I'm using and what shortcuts I'm using, basically. Cool. Is my keystroke on? Perfect. So you can see my keystrokes right here, right here in the corner. So there we go. And it's really, yeah, it's really sensitive. So you're going to get everything. If it gets a little bit annoying, let me know and I'll try to find a way to turn down the settings. But as of now, this is what we're going to use. Okay, so now we've brought our colors in from the file. Actually, it might be useful as well to bring in the other assets as well, which is the logo. So I'm going to quickly export that logo as an SVG. Okay, King's logo. I'll extend this, also add this crown as well. King's crown, cool. And then let's export that. Let me just get the right file, stick it in the right place. Very important as well. You probably already do this. If you don't, please do this. Always have like really useful places to store things. So when other people are picking up your file, they can find things really quickly, right? So I'm just going to name them very, very simple. This is logo. And I'm going to put, and because obviously nothing is kind of finalized yet, I'm going to add dates to my folders. So dates let me know that, okay, this is not necessarily like the newest logo, it's a version of. And so, you know, that logo will be there. Cool, now export a logo. We're good. Come back. Let's export. Oh, by the way, I noticed that the key command didn't come up. I've pressed Command, Shift and K to open up the import window in Figma. And that would allow me to basically import things. SVGs. I'm going to place that here and I'll place that there. So that's there. So I kind of have these already I have these as my kind of main components as well, or main assets I'm going to use. Okay. Now I'm going to set up my color card. Cool. So first thing first, I'll usually like to set up the typography side of things. So I'm going to set it up as color name. And because we already know the typeface, let us use, yep, that's cool. I'm going to make that 28 point. No, it might be too big. 24 does the job. Cool. I'm going to duplicate that. So I usually name my layers accordingly as well. So color name, cool. I like to rename them like that. Color name, I like to rename my layers as well. Again, guys, uttermost pet peeve of a lot of design. When you open up the file and the files, the layers not labeled. Label your layers, name them, give them a name, keep it consistent. You're going to see me do this a lot, and it's just a general habit. I like to name my layers because when you're using them in, for example, like prototyping, layer names become very, very important. So I'm going to use my hex code. Cool. And then we'll put that into the secondary font, which was plus Jakarta Sans, right? Yep. Plus. Cool. And that will be 20. You can kind of see I'm creating a typography hierarchy as we speak. So I'll kind of put that in there. Cool. And then within that, let's keep that 20. I will then add the description, and that will kind of be like your normal sized 16, maybe even 14, because it's just literally a short description. And I'll call this description. Always name it as instruction. Yeah, description. I told you my keystrokes are very sensitive. But hey, description of color and how and when to use it. Sorted. Cool. All right. So with that, one thing I like to do as well is I like to use the, what do they call it here? The vertical trim to ensure that everything kind of is not hanging out. I don't like my font hanging out. And I feel like Figma introducing this feature was a very, very useful one. So I tend to use that off the bat to ensure that my spacing is, as precise as it can be. Obviously, when you take it into production, in terms of like development, it can change a little bit. I think that's a little bit chunky. Let me make that 18. And let me make that bold. And I make that regular. Perfect. Cool. All right. So let's put that into an auto layout frame. And I'm going to call this color information, or color info, I guess. Color info container. Boom. All right. So then I like to get another auto layout frame. I'll put the title and the hex code together. Title plus hex code. It's raining where I am. You might be able to hear that in the background. If not, the noise isolation feature is working really well on my computer. All good. Let's make that 24. I'll talk about spacing very soon and I'll tell you the reason why I use specific sizing requirements. Yeah, happy with that. Cool. Then I create the overall container and I call that color card. And I put a dot in the beginning, because when you put a dot in the beginning, it treats it as a component that doesn't get imported when you're using it in other files. So it doesn't, it's not going to get used in that sense. So the dot allows you to kind of like reserve it aside and not include it in the main overall export. Okay, that's done. Then I'll just kind of manually size it. Some people, like to use their padding, and it's not that important in this particular case. Maybe for me it's a little bit important, but in the general perspective, it's not that important. So I will therefore like create my color card, and there you go. So let me just fill that with a color, not white, but let's just say the blue, for example. And then I'll give that a little bit of border radius because I am a stylist like that. 12 is too fat, maybe 16 to use 8. Nice. And then I like to use this the iOS cornering smoothing. I like that. I generally have that at 70%. I use that on buttons, especially when I'm using like around the corners and things like that. That just makes it, well, it says what it says, smooth. Cool. So that is my color card sorted. Now, looking at that, I'm happy with that. Cool. I tend to also have it at the bottom because it just gives the color the main center stage. I'm gonna hit that 24. Cool. Now it looks like a card. So you can imagine, for example, if you have a color book, like one of them Pantone books, you have a card that's got color on it and it's got text on it. This is what we've just created. So effectively, we created our first component, and this is going to be used across all the colors, right? I'm happy with that. In fact, I want that spacing just to be a little bit. And okay, so the reason why I'm very kind of anal right now about spacing is because of one of two things. One, visual consistency, and two, this is gradually going to become part of a documented framework, right? So everything has to be documented. So it needs to be clear off the bat. So when an external user is coming out, another designer, you're handing over to development, they can look at these components and read it and know what it is. So this is basically us in a stylistically way, creating documentation for everything that we are using. I hope that makes sense. Cool on that. Do you know what? I want that bit smaller. Make it 12. Yeah, it just makes it nicer, Cool. All right, I'm going to create that as a component. So I'm going to press Command, Option, and K. That's my first component. And then within this component, I like to create component properties because this will make life even more easier when we are labeling these colors visually. So we're going to add a property. I'm clicking on the property button, add the plus button, and we're going to call this color name. And then that will be the default color name. And then the hex code. Actually, very interesting. One thing I actually like to do as well, because I don't like typing this hash so many times. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create another auto layout frame. And I'll call this hex container. And I'm going to duplicate this label here. So this will be hex code. This will be hashtag. And I'm going to make that a hug. And then 1, 2, 3, going to give it like a 4 pixel spacing. Cool. So therefore, when I'm pasting in the hex code, I don't have to keep typing hash. Anything to save time, I'm here for it. Do you know what I mean? And with this one as well, we're just going to double check that. Okay, one little quick lesson about auto layout is I also like to ensure that everything is flexible. So if I need to kind of use an auto layout frame, I need to make sure it's flexible. So for example, this description box, if the description really gets long, I want to ensure that everything kind of moves up flexibly. So perfect, we've checked it. And how we've checked it is basically looking at the way the frame is constructed. We're at the top left, whilst on the main frame, everything at the bottom, top left, bottom left. That makes sense? Cool. All right. Now we've got that sorted. Let's create the rest of the component properties. So the hex code, create another thing and call it hex code. And that would be what it is. So, my gosh, the thunder is thundering. Okay. And then for the description, we're going to create a description property as well. Done. So now this component is now officially available to be used right away. I'm looking at the left and right padding. I kind of want it to be a bit thicker. So I'm going to make it 20. Perfection. Perfection. Good. Cool. All right. So now I'm going to take a copy of this. Copy. Going to go to the library. Going to paste that component. So now I have a copy of this component. So whatever changes I make, because there will be changes, i.e. when we do our type scale, that's going to change. That's going to change. That's all going to change. As of now, we've got something to work with. Okay. Now let me grab the colors. Cut that. And again, you're going to see how I'm going to tidy up things as I go, because obviously when we start, our canvas is always a bit of a mess. But the whole idea is you tidy as you go, right? So you do one piece of one set of things, and then you tidy it up. Okay, great stuff. Now, what we now need to do is we need to set up the variables. Now, I always set up the variables first before kind of laying everything out, because you're kind of getting all the colors into the system. Now, how we do that is we click on the local variable section, and then we create a variable. Now, generally speaking, these are the foundational elements of the color, right? So before we start applying rules with regards to how it behaves in light mode and dark mode, we therefore need to create what we call primitives. In the Figma land, that's what we call it. I don't know why they've called it that, but I'm sticking with it. So we're going to call it primitives. If I can, okay, primitives. I call it prims. Then I will / that, and I'll call it color. Now this is where I'll get all of the color in, right? Before we start creating tokens on how we use that color. What just happened there? Okay. Cool. So the first color we create is we create the blue color. Good thing is we can take that, I drop it, we create that color. So this is again going to be another labor of love, but this is what we do. We need to do this so we can get it all into the system. So when we're doing the production work in creating the actual design, all of this layer work is already done. And here's a trick. Now, in your career, particularly in the freelance world, and also actually in-house as well, By you taking this time out to create the component library the way you've created it right now, the trick is you could then take this and template it. What do I mean by that? You can take this system, and then when you get a new client, you can be like, okay, it's going to take me 5 days. It already took you 5 days to build the thing, but you build them for 5 days anyways, because that's how much it's worth, the time you put into it. And you spend a couple of days customizing the whole system. So you've made 3 days profit basically, or in an in-house perspective, you've saved a whole lot of the time by spending 2 days of customizing something that you've already built. Because generally speaking, the assets you're going to create here are building blocks for any system anyway. Yeah, cool. So I know it's a little bit tedious, but we kind of have to do this work off the bat just so we can be very, very like relaxed as the project goes on. So the first thing I need to do is like to group the colors. So how we group the colors is you can do it one of two ways. You can create a group with a selection, or you can literally put it in the syntax in itself. So I will say brand / blue 500. Now these colors will have a name, and I think this is called the King's Blue actually. King's Blue 500. And why do I put the 500 in there? So the 500, when you think about the spectrum of color, 500 between 100 and 1,000, 500 is kind of like the middle, which is where you get the true color. Anything either side of that, so if you go to 600, the color gets darker. If you go to 400, the color gets lighter. And I'll quickly show you something real quick and how I back this up. So this is a system I use called Eva Design System, and Eva Design System is a really good tool. Now there are many tools out there that help you do this, but this is one that I use. Okay, I'm more than happy to hear whatever you guys use, but this is what I use. It works. It's very simple. It's straight to the point. So if I took, for example, the King's Blue, I plugged it into Eva Design System, even though it only just does color, but hey. What it does, it produces a color spectrum, right? So 500 shows you the true color. 100 is the lightest it gets. 900 is the darkest it gets. This is probably where I take my blacks from, right? And it does it across literally every piece of colors. And the minute you plug a color in, it auto generates for you a color spectrum. So I like to call it 500 just in case, as we're designing this system, there's a need for a brighter blue, or, a semantic use, for example, if we're doing like a button hover. So you hover over this blue and it turns into a slightly lighter blue. This is where, for example, a 400 will come into place, or a 300 will come into place, or an 800, for example. So I call it with a number just so we know that's the base, that's the true color, the base color that we're going to use. I hope that makes sense. So again, brand / King's Blue / 500. My naming convention before the use of periods has been taken out is I use the main color. So I'll say King's Blue, and then dot will be like another parameter of it. So for example, color dot shade, or if we're working on a button, it'll be color, or button primary dot size, for example. And you get the drift. You get the drift as we go on. Sometimes it's a bit hard to explain. I need to show you how these things really work. Okay, cool. So we've got the King's Blue. That's the first brand color, and I think this other blue will be a light version of it. I won't be surprised. Actually, it really looks like it's been taken from Eva Design. Let me see. So that's what 2F4. Okay, well, it's slightly lighter, I guess. But I'm looking at this got a bit more of a saturation to it. But hey, that's good. And the next thing, we're going to create a color. We're going to duplicate this, and I think to duplicate it is Shift Enter. And Shift Enter allows us to copy a variable. So now we'll call this one, I think this is the lightest this color will ever be used. So I'll call it King's Blue 100. And then we'll take that drop just so it is precise. Cool. So now we've got King's Blue and King's, King's 500 and King's 100. Let me rearrange that as well so it's in order, because I like to view things in numerical order. Okay, so now we've got that done. Let's create another set of colors, and I'm assuming these will be like accent colors. But again, because of the system and the way it's so flexible, we can just add it as we go, or change it around. So let us create another color, or not another mode, sorry, another color. And we're going to call this King's Yellow. Actually, I like King Sunshine. I like Sunshine. King Sunshine 500. Again, we take that. Boom. Duplicate. And then we'll call this the King's, I don't know what this is, Mocha? We'll call that Mocha. We'll call it King's, we'll call it Mocha. Just call it Mocha because it was like a nice mocha. Mocha 500. Cool, duplicate that. And then we'll have Mocha 100. I think that's like a nice variable of that as well. So we'll call that Mocha 100. Cool. So now we've got our accented colors. Do you know what? Let's call it Sunshine. Sunshine, because the King's, when the colors that with the King's syntax on it, we'll know that's specifically like for branding, and everything else is an accent. So we highlight that, create new group with selection, and we'll call this group accents. Cool. So now we've got Sunshine, we've got Mocha 100 and Mocha 500. Perfect. Next, we're going to create what I call the functional colors. Now, the functional colors are interesting because this is what we use for function, i.e. what we create when we're creating fields, for example, a text field, or when we're using typography, for example, what we're going to use for type, what's the main color going to be. So we have, these functional colors that will be for what we use. Brand, accents, done. Now we're going to use functional colors. Let's set up the functional colors. So I keep pressing this mode button. It's so infuriating. Okay. I'm going to create a new color, and we're going to call that color blue black. Blue black. That's a really rubbish name. Let's call it dark blue. There we go. Really simple. Dark blue. And that'll be 500 again, because that's the base we're using. So anything dark or lighter, we're probably not going to use anything darker either. So cool. Take that. I drop that. Plug it in there. Perfect. Now we're going to use gray. So shift enter. Gray. Now looking at the spectrum of gray, we need to decide and make a decision and take a stand here on what we're going to number it as. So I think this will be gray 500 and this will be gray 300, because it's not necessarily too light, but it's not the lightest at the same time. So this would be gray 500. We're going to eyedrop that. And then gray 300. And we'll eyedrop that too. Nice. So we've got our grays. And then this will be our off-white. We can call it we'll call it snow. I might be doing too much with these names, and the client might go like, can you just not call it white? We'll apologize later. So let's call that snow. And because it's white is really white, so I'm just going to call it 100. Yeah, it's actually a snow. It's not 100% white, so we call it 200. There we go. Take that, and then we'll eyedrop that, and then we're good. All right, so now we're going to now we're seeing, how the colors work. And these are now our functional colors, right? Functional colors. So create a new group with selection, and then call it functional. And now we're going to create our semantic colors. Now, what are semantic colors, you may ask? Semantic colors are things that you get, that you use for responding to a system. So for example, you fill in a form and your email address is wrong, and then you get this big red box to say, this is a semantic color, the red. Let me show you. So back to Eva Design System. Generally is what I will take the semantic colors based on what it gives me here, because I feel like they're generally okay. I might tweak some of the things. For example, this is a little bit pink for my liking, but I'll amend it nonetheless. Do you know what I mean? But it gives you a good base to use. And then if you're not really happy with the shades, hit the refresh button. Like I'm not happy with these right now, and it just, it pumps some new ones out. And you can see now the info that's meant to be blue is looking a bit turquoisey. We don't like that. However, another good thing about the system is if you like it, lock it in. So I like this green palette right here because I'm going to use this 500 and I'm going to use this 100 and lock that in. I'm not really happy with this blue. This warning yellow is a bit murky, and this is still very pink. But you know what? I can actually work with this warning. Yeah, I can work with a warning. We're going to work with a warning. Cool. Use warning. So we're going to get it to regenerate the blues and the reds. Let's see. Nope. Nope. I'm looking for kind of, just as close to normal looking colors as possible. Nothing fancy, because these are only just like, responsive colors, or responding colors, should I say. Nope. Nope. Okay, this might be, nope, actually changed my mind. Nope. And this is the process. Sometimes we're here for 5 minutes, just clicking away until we get the right combination. But because the system is smart, it will gradually come up with something. I kind of need this danger as well to be kind of more dangery. Do you know what I mean? I keep going. Come on. Oh, this is it. I like this. Gonna lock that in. Now we just need to do with the reds. Still a bit pink. Can you make it a bit more red, guys? Come on. You can do this. What it's doing, the reason why it's not coming out super red is because it's kind of actually matching it to the brand colors. So it's still kind of trying to create some form of brands. My hand is moving. I realize you can't actually see my hands. It's trying to create some form of color synergy. But in this particular case, I'm not looking for synergy. I'm just looking for functional colors that work well. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's coming up with something a bit more pink. In that case, let me just kind of change this to, let's say, a purple. Let's see what it comes up with. And even though I've changed it here, because I've locked these ones in, these are not going to change. It's only going to change the ones that are unlocked. Just going to hit the refresh button again, and again, and again. We're getting a little bit closer. Okay, do you know what? In the essence of time, I'm just going to take what we're given, then I'm going to tweak it in Figma. Because sometimes you can be sitting there for, again, more than 5 minutes. I wouldn't spend more than 5 minutes clicking buttons, because I think after a while, it just goes through a whole range of colors and you just start to see all of the same color. You can't see anything different after that. So we're going to create the semantics. So with my semantics, I tend to take the 500 and the 100 and I kind of layer them on top of each other. Now, this is where accessibility comes in, because in my mind, I'm thinking of like a toast, for example. When you post something and a little alert comes up on your screen to say this has been posted, for example, that's usually like a little bar that's got a dark background with writing on top. I envision this being like, light green with dark green writing in it, something, like, do you know what? I keep explaining these things and I've realized you can't see my hands. So let me just quickly explain it to you real quick. So let's just say we have a toast, right? And that toast, for argument's sake, is going to be green. Yeah? Green. Cool. So the way I kind of envision it is, give me 1 second. I envision it is we take this green and then we create the fill to be a version of that green. When it does it, So the fill, let me try it again. The fill will be green, but then I'll kind of like, you know, brighten it. So like that. So this is where you'll find your 500 and then your 100. So your 100 is the background, your 500 is the foreground. And then when it comes to accessibility, I tend to test those colors, then I tweak it, and then I stick it into the system. I'm going to show you that in 1 second.